If you've been following me on Instagram and Snapchat long enough, then you've probably already know that I don't feed my dogs dry kibble or wet food. I feed them a diet that is mostly raw meaty bones, vegetables, organ meats, and certain other foods. Now, before you sharpen up your pitchforks or crack your fingers so you can properly call me a monster in the comment section of this video, let me explain why I feed them this way. First off, raw meaty bones are perfectly safe for dogs. It's cooked bones that are dangerous. Cooking the bone changes the consistency and makes it brittle and indigestible. Raw bones are somewhat flexible and are harmless so long as the dog chews its food properly. And eating bone is necessary because it would otherwise give them diarrhea. You can see one of the ingredients in dog food is bone meal. Dogs have been eating this way for thousands of years. Now you're probably typing, dogs evolved from wolves and their stomachs can only digest dog food because they're evolved. That's completely asinine. Despite all the different sizes and varieties, dogs share about 99.9% DNA with wolves. Unlike a liger, when dogs and wolves interbreed, the offspring are able to reproduce because the two species are still so closely related. Now look at these numbers. It takes about 1 million years for a species to evolve. Most experts say humans began living with dogs 30,000 years ago, and dog food has only been around for a little over 100 years. So there's no way a dog's stomach could evolve to subsist only on cooked dog food that fast. Most people will get sick eating raw food, unless you're that Liver King guy. And unless I'm remembering my human history wrong, it was Homo erectus that popularized the controlled use of fire. So humans have been cooking for a long time. Technically, humans can eat raw food. There are communities that exist to this day that routinely consume raw meat. However, raw meat does run a higher risk of containing harmful bacteria to humans, and that is why people cook the meat to ensure it's safe to consume. However, this isn't as big of a deal for dogs because Salmonella is a bacteria that already exists in the dog's gut flora. I do make sure to freeze my dog's meat for a certain amount of time to make sure it kills any potential parasites. The amount of time you have to freeze it differs between what kind of meat you have. For instance, they say to freeze raw poultry for about 3 days, but wild game should be in the freezer for about 6 months. I always recommend freezing it longer than what they say just to be safe. If you can wait 6 months, you might as well wait a year. Before I move on, here's one more point about safety. I've been feeding Key raw meaty bones since I adopted him as a 10-week-old puppy, and I fed Lola this way since I adopted her a year ago. If raw meaty bones were dangerous, they would both be dead by now. They're probably some of my healthiest dogs I've ever had. So what made me change to raw food? I've spent years doing research on all things dog related, both in my free time and for school, which eventually led me to research raw feeding. At the time, my only dog was Tilly, and she spent a lifetime eating kibble. I was initially skeptical of it, but after realizing how many benefits it had compared to kibble, I took a long, hard look at Tilly. Her teeth weren't the best, her skin was kind of dry, and she carried a strong odor. Raw-fed dogs are less likely to have these problems, and I felt awful knowing that I could have given her a far better quality of life. Granted, I was only a teenager at the time. I'm never going back to kibble. I feel like everyone knows dog food sucks and they just don't say it out loud. Professional chefs like Gordon Ramsay compare lousy dishes to dog food all the time. It's not perfectly balanced like they claim. They kind of have a one-size-fits-all kind of philosophy when selling dog food. For instance, do you think a Chihuahua puppy should eat the same puppy kibble that a St. Bernard puppy eats? A dog's diet varies depending on breed, health, and life stages. Not every breed should eat the same diet. Kibble is also a cereal-like product, and I've had this debate with a friend of mine many times before, and to prove my point, I've decided to perform a science experiment. For it, I needed only 2 pieces of kibble, and it took me forever to find someone to give me just a little bit of kibble for this experiment. I did not realize I hung out with so many cat owners. Thank you, Zach. The kibble he gave me was Blue Buffalo, and to prove it's similar to cereal, I put it in a glass of water for an hour. We all know cereal either puffs up or disintegrates when it sits in milk too long. After staying in the water for an hour, it grew 3 times its original size. I also poked it with a toothpick just to see how mushy it was, and it stuck to the toothpick. For comparison purposes, I did the same experiment with some Captain Crunch. It disintegrated faster because Captain Crunch had a pocket of air in the center and it doubled its size. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, I could have gone the extra mile and put a chicken leg quarter in some water, but I'm pretty sure everyone has to had a defrost chicken before and knows chicken is still chicken when it's wet. Now, imagine how it would be in a dog's stomach acid. As we all know, food should be digested for about 6 to 8 hours in the stomach. If it puffs up this fast in water, it'll break down even faster in a dog's stomach. A lifetime of this weakens the dog's G-tract and increases the risk of bloat. Raw feeding doesn't stop bloat altogether, but it makes it far less likely to happen. So what raw foods do I feed my dogs? We start every morning by feeding them vegetables. I do this because if I give them vegetables alongside meat, it makes them less likely to eat them because they'll just go for the meat. It's like how some people don't eat salad that comes with their steak. They're also hungrier in the morning, so they'll eat anything. I feed them blueberries, sweet peppers, and fun fact, they help with flatulence both in humans and dogs. Brussels sprouts, celery, carrots, kale, and canned pumpkin. I'll also give them eggs and a small amount of oatmeal. Eggs have all the nutrients a dog needs, including the shell, and they're a good thing to feed them when they have an upset stomach. Then for lunch, I feed them chicken leg quarters, tilapia, pompano, and turkey. The fish is completely whole, and I feed it as is, whether it's been gutted or not. I could feed them almost any fatty river fish, but those are the 2 varieties that are what's available in my area. Then for dinner, I'll give them organ meats, such as chicken liver, chicken hearts, gizzards, and I may also give them turkey necks and chicken feet. Chicken feet are good for arthritis because they have collagen in them. All these foods are spread throughout the week. And if you look up raw feeding videos on YouTube, you'll see them feed these super complex meals in an effort to make it perfectly balanced. I once saw a guy that put calamari in his dog's bowl amongst tripe, liver, and all these other things that I can't remember. A balanced diet is important and all, but it just needs to be throughout the week and not the day. Think about it. No animal gets everything it needs in the food pyramid all in one meal. I know I don't. All I had for breakfast today was a banana. Those videos honestly make raw feeding seem much harder than it actually is. You don't need to put in that level of effort. I'd say the only hard part about raw feeding is just dividing it into Ziploc bags for individual meals. It does take them longer to eat, but that's a good thing. Some breeds like Mastiffs or Bulldogs are prone to gulping, and feeding kibble just enables that. Chewing is the first stage of digestion, and it doesn't take much effort to chew kibble. You can see when they're eating raw meaty bones that it takes real effort on their part. I always feed it to them frozen, and that makes them think how to go about eating it, and makes their jaw and shoulder muscles work harder. I've also found that feeding raw is cheaper depending on where you shop. Take Blue Buffalo, for instance. For a 24-pound of this well-known brand of kibble, in some stores I've seen it go over $50. However, I can buy 2 10-pound bags of chicken leg quarters for about $12 at my local Food Lion. It's almost the same amount of food for much less. Here's a few more points I like to bring up. Some idiots will say raw food makes your dog act more aggressive, but that's not true. A dog may bite its owner in the presence of raw food because it's a higher value food to them and they're afraid you're going to take it from them. It just means you haven't done enough work preventing food aggression. I'm able to pet both my dogs while they're eating, and they don't seem to mind at all. They understand I have no intention of taking their food. If you're concerned that feeding your dog raw food would be messy and you don't have a fenced-in yard like I do, then try feeding them in their crate. It's a small area to clean, and it makes them enjoy the crate more. If you want to know more about feeding raw, I recommend reading Give Your Dog a Bone by Dr. Ian Billinghurst and looking up raw feeding videos online. Everyone does it differently, so do what's best for you and your dog. A good indicator that you're feeding your dog right is are small yet firm turds. If you have a puppy or a small breed dog, you can start feeding them chicken wings that have been tenderized and with a meat cleaver or a meat tenderizer. If you want to introduce your adult dog to raw feeding, feed them something larger than its head and completely frozen so they have to chew it thoroughly. And if you have a fear of blood and you really can't feed your dog raw food, because that's honestly the only excuse I can think of, then I also want to mention a company that I found that seems so much interesting if that's your situation. Nom Nom is a subscription service that delivers perfectly portioned meals designed specifically for your dog. You just have to answer some questions about your dog's breed, age, health, and etc. A veterinarian dietitian will then create a meal plan for your dog, and it's shipped to your door. It's not raw food because it is gently cooked, and it doesn't seem to give your dog much of a workout eating it, but I like that you can see the ingredients. Anything could be in kibble. For instance, you may see that one of the ingredients in kibble is chicken byproduct. That could be anything from talons, beaks, feathers, and other things that are probably also in hot dogs. I'm still going to feed raw because I feel like I'm in complete control of what goes in my dog's diet. Everything I feed them is just one ingredient, and I have less to worry about when it comes to knowing where my dog's food comes from. I figure I'd mention Nom Nom because it seems like to be the next best thing to raw food. It seems very foolproof, I say hesitantly. Thought I'd mention it just in case anyone wanted to feed their dogs a better diet, but still felt skeptical of feeding raw. Do your research, do what's best for you and your dog, small yet firm turds. The next video I'll make is going to be a nice, easy, top 10-ish video. Something that doesn't make me have to do an exchange for a dime bag of kibble in a truck stop parking lot.